Welcome, guys. This is Henry NWR3 and HankAmericanEngine, and today we're going to do Around the Watertower. This is a new podcast series that we've come up with, and we're so excited to share with you guys. But, Hank, I'll let you talk a little bit more about yourself, since this is our first one.
Howdy, guys. This is HankAmericanEngine. For starters, this podcast was a good idea. It came actually from Henry NWR3. And second, we are not ripping off the Unlucky Tugs Season 20 review. We're literally just going to be talking about Season 20, what we liked about it, what we thought could have used a little work, what we didn't like about it, and just a couple of other random things here and there. So, I hope you guys enjoy this. It's a first for both of us, and hopefully we can keep it going so that way we can put content on our channel as life goes on, but I'm looking forward to hearing what we've got to say about this. So, Henry, you want to take it away?
Sure. Now, Season 20 was a fantastic season, and I dare to even go out with a bold statement and say that this perhaps was even the best CGI season. But there were some episodes that were better than others, episodes that weren't as good as others, and overall there's just many opinions about the season as a whole. And I think that we should take turns and do our top 5 favorites and start off with that. Or do you want to do the top 5 least favorite episodes?
I think we should start with the least favorite, just so that way people can understand like where we're coming from before we just jump to the top 5. And then we could do the honorable mentions before the top 5, because I know we have a lot of favorite stories in this. Season 20 is probably the most rewatched season for the CGI series for me, out of all of the ones that have been produced so far.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, alright, I guess I'll go through my 5 first, and then we'll go back on to Hank, and we'll talk about each one and why we don't like them, perhaps. Now, for top 5, for my number 5 least favorite episode, this is going to trigger a lot of people, but it's actually Letters to Santa.
Really? Letters to Santa?
Yep, and the reason why, and this may sound like a really weird reason, but I feel like Percy having a Christmas story every single time, I really think it takes away from that special moment of Percy actually having good Christmas stories. And I don't want to say this episode is bad. No, I actually do enjoy this episode, but compared to all the other episodes that we were given in Season 20, it just didn't seem to really grab my attention so much. Now, the Railway Series part with Percy and Harold, I really loved that sequence, and I really loved the action of Harold going to rescue or give the mail to Hero. But from the rest of it, it seemed pretty forgettable for the rest of it, for the most part, to me.
Personally speaking, I wouldn't say that Letters to Santa was the best Percy episode for the season or the worst. It was just one that you'll watch every now and again. It's not something you'll go back and you'll re-watch time and time again unless you're a really die-hard Percy fan. But, you know, I kind of respect what you have to say. It's not something that you would continually watch. Oh, and on that note of people claiming that Jeremy is returning, that was a Trackmaster version of him. They're not bringing him back.
If Jeremy and the airport came back, that'd be pretty cool. I'm not going to lie, because that was an interesting location.
Wishful thinking is what I'll say. Wishful thinking.
Now, should I go ahead and head on to number 4, you think?
Yeah.
Alright. For number 4, I have Hugo and the Airship. Now, the first Hugo episode, I thought that was okay, but I thought it could have been a lot better, and I was really looking forward to Hugo and the Airship because we never really seen the airship before. And I just thought it'd be an interesting story, and perhaps that, I don't know, Hugo and the airship could interact with the crew of the airship or something. But it really just fell flat. I mean, I really thought that Hugo trying to jump the rails was just a little stupid. And just how that was, like, pretty much, I don't know, half the episode, it seemed like. It just really wasn't that good at all. And I really don't want to watch that episode again, especially when a better episode could have been made for Hugo.
I think the thing that Mattel forgets exists in the real world, and that must translate over to the series, is physics. Hugo is not going to take off.
What did Thomas say to him and Skiff though about physics or whatever?
I don't know. I don't care. But Mattel has clearly forgotten that physics actually exists. And the fact that Sodor is an actual running railway on the island. He can't just keep one main line out of the three to himself in a stupid attempt to try and fly. Hurtle down the other side of the mountain on the sharpest track, and maybe you'll fly right off the rails. But that's it. You're not going to go straight up into the sky. You'll go straight across into the dirt mound. That's just me, though.
I mean, it's a valid point. But I think that's pretty much what we have to say on Hugo and Airship. So now I'm going to move on to number 3, which is Tobys New Friend.
Oh, boy. Now, here we go.
Phillip is a less than desirable character, mostly for others compared to me. But either way, I just didn't really like the episode too much. I thought it was a storyline with Toby that's been used before, such as the one with Belle in season 5. I mean, it just seemed like the exact same thing. Instead of Belle's this time, it was about racing. Which...
Don't you mean season 15?
Oh, that's right. I thought it said season 15.
Season 5 was like the Indiana Jones of the series.
Season 5 was good, and season 15 was like the worst, so I am sorry. That probably offended someone, so oh no.
Get triggered, people.
But either way, Phillip, he's not my favorite character, but I don't absolutely hate him. But I still feel like in this episode, he wasn't the best that he could have possibly been. And I don't believe this was a good Toby episode, honestly. And so I just would have preferred a reworking of it, or perhaps just a different episode in general. But that's my own personal opinion on it. Now, let's listen to Hank's opinion on this, because we're going to have some opinions on this.
You'll hear my opinion just as soon as we finish your top 5 least favorite episodes, buddy.
All right. So, let's just move on to number 2 then. We'll go to Sydney Sings. Now, the reason I was so excited for this episode, I love Sydney, and I would love to see more of him, because when he appeared in that season 21 episode, Philip's Number, I loved him and Paxton in their interaction. I love those two working together, and I would love an episode with those two together. And I was just so excited because Sydney actually had a good role. But, however, the entire plot just seemed very weak. It just seemed like a really boring plot line, and I just didn't like the whole entire idea being centered around him trying to sing and remember a song. I felt like a lot more potential could have been provided with Sydney's first episode, and with this being his only real main role, I would prefer something else soon. That way we can get some more character development and probably a actually funny episode instead of one that's trying way too hard to be humorous.
Do you think they were trying to pull off Enterprising Engine's 93 Sydney, but instead of keeping it on the little western, they decided to take it to the main line? Because that's the kind of feeling I get from it watching it, in all honesty.
The writers, they can't be as good as Enterprising Engine 93 with his Sydney. His Sydney is like the best. It's like the gold standard of Sydney. That's what I was expecting. And then I was halfway into this, and I was like, wait a second, who am I thinking was going to write this?
They haven't hired him yet.
They haven't. They need to, because Sydney would have been written excellent, and then we would have been fine. We would have had a good episode.
I will say that it was not the strongest start to this amazing season, but it was a decent one. I mean, sure, you could feel the 3 strikes formula, and everyone was probably cringing, saying, oh god, Sharon Miller has returned. But, I mean, it suited Sydney. He's got perpetual short-term memory loss. It's never going to go away. The fact that he remembered about an elephant amazes me, in all honesty.
And I do have to agree, out of the 3 strikes formula episodes, this is probably my favorite out of that, because it really didn't seem like it was forced down your throat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree and say that it doesn't belong on your list at all, but it's just not one that you'll go back to watch again and again, unless, as I said, you really love that character.
Exactly. Now, should I bring up the top 1?
Number 1?
I was about to say top 5, but then I was like, we're already...
I'm going to warn the audience. if you like his least favorite episode from this season, if you're really going to comment about it, be civil, don't be immature, and get triggered. Take it away, Henry.
Alright. I did not like Pouty James. That was my least favorite.
Ooh.
It just seemed way too gimmicky in the storyline, etc. I didn't really bond with all the facial emotions and stuff like that, and I feel like that's what the episode was about. They were trying to really play with the CGI mechanics more than the actual story there, with how they can make the characters move their faces in certain ways. And from a CGI aspect, that's pretty cool, but at the same time, I felt like the storyline felt flat. And especially at the end, I felt like it could have ended with James arriving at the Natvert station, and then they just stretched it on to make the time limit or whatever. I don't know. It was just a bad episode in my opinion. I don't really care if I saw it again. I mean, if I saw it again, cool, but I could go without seeing it.
I hear keyboards clacking and screaming for mercy. People are triggered. Well, I'm going to be honest. I can kind of understand your opinion. One thing I can't understand is how the hell Porter split his eyeballs in two separate directions while making his face. We don't work like that, Mattel. No human is able to do that unless they have a lazy eye.
Actually, they're trained, so it's okay.
But they still have to follow human physics. No living creature, barring some, can move their eyes in separate directions.
What if he's part platypus? Because can't they do that?
You've been watching way too much Phineas and Ferb, dude. Platypi can't do that.
Daggone it. My platypus facts are wrong.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that your opinion is the worst. One of my gripes for this episode is the fact that the local is just those branch line coaches. Mattel, you know we love the red coaches. Use the red coaches for local trains. Just 2 of them is enough. The branch line coaches are for the branch line. They're not mainline service trains. People have to go and use the bathroom, you know. There are no halls in these coaches. There's no bathroom in them either. The express coaches have them.
Plus, it would be really nice to see just variety in rolling stock. Because, as we know, ARC loves the red cars, and they apparently love the red branch line coaches, too. So, it would just be nice to see some variety. We started seeing that in Season 21, though, with freight cars, at least.
Yeah,
so,
at
I
least.
do have to give that.
Alright, well, you had a pretty decent list for your top 5 least favorites, so I'm assuming it's my turn.
It is.
Kicking off number 5 is actually going to be 3 Steam Engines Gruff.
It's a really interesting pick.
It's a bad story. I'm just going to put it that way. The only reason people love it, the only reason people love this episode is because of Trevor. For the love of God, shoot his US voice actor, not the UK one. The US voice actor. Kill him. That is such a bad voice for Trevor.
It's a little too far.
Okay, well, at least swap him, fire him, and put someone else who can give Trevor a real voice. The UK voice for Trevor should have been it for America, not whatever country man they got.
Is there any other reasons why you don't like the episode, or is it just because of Trevor?
Well, that's the only reason people will like the episode. They say, oh my god, Trevor has returned, the series is saved, he speaks. No. Toby is... They keep playing Toby as being the scared old man. It's so boring. It's so overdone. For Christ's sake, Toby got pushed onto a tightrope of rails in Season 3. There's a reason to be terrified. Not about the fact that it's raining and there's something making noise underneath a bridge. Unless the bridge is collapsing. Again, Season 3, but they're not really understanding the characters. I can kind of see it with Percy, but they could have given Toby's role to say, I don't know, for God's sake, Stanley. Well, enter welcome Stanley comments. I don't care, but it would.
We need to change Stanley's color to make him more relevant in the show, and yeah.
They're not going to do that. But Toby's role would have suited Stanley, because Stanley, we don't even know if he's been on that part of Thomas's branch line. It would make much more sense in my eyes. Would have driven the story a bit more, because Percy's easily scared. We've noticed this. So having Stanley say something, that'll scare Percy, and then Tom is seeing both of them terrified. yeah, it'll carry on to him. But with Toby, it's just like the joke's over. It's old. It's annoying.
I do agree with that. Now, I actually liked the episode. I thought it was a fun episode and a nice little Halloween thing. And I really did like the part where Percy came back to Shed all scared and crashed into Henry. But at the same time, I can really see your concerns because the U.S. voice actor for Trevor, I think it's no, because the UK voice actor is just amazing at playing Trevor, and I really do feel like he suits the character. But for Trevor, they're just trying to get like a really southern stereotype, like farmer, and it just doesn't pay off.
They tried to do that with my namesake. They failed.
And I feel like the Toby card is overplayed. But at the same time, it was nice to see all three of the branch line engines that work on that line and made that branch line famous together again.
Oh, wait, there is one thing I liked about this episode. For once, we get to see Thomas's branch line!
Indeed.
Anyway, I'm done about 3 steam engines gruff. I'm gonna move on to number 4. Get triggered, everybody. I did not like Henry in the dark. I just didn't.
Now, how come you didn't like it? Because I like the paint idea. I thought it was an interesting idea, and I thought it had a little bit of an actual comedy part at the end, where recently it doesn't seem like all their comedy has fell flat, but I felt like this one was actually a little humorous.
I'm not going to lie and say that the humor was bad, it's just tasteless. For one, why are they now just bringing in, oh, Sodor has glow-in-the-dark paint on signs so people can see what they're doing. Most people are asleep at night. 1, so there's barely anyone on the road. 2, and for those of you who hate or like Kevin, you may either like me or you may hate me. I don't know. I don't care. Why the hell did no employee at the Steamworks, or even Victor for the matter, notice that Kevin grabbed the wrong palette of paint? Seriously. How did they not notice? Did they just run out of green paint and they say, oh yeah, there's green paint over there, and they're pointing at the wrong kind? Clearly they had the rest of the paint they needed for Henry, but not the right green one.
I don't know. Now, there are a lot of different shades of green, so perhaps it was just a simple mix-up.
How many shades of green are there on Sodor?
You have Henry and Percy's shade, then you have Duck and Oliver's whiffs. Porter. Then you have that.
Sam?
Sorry?
Peter Sam?
Yeah, Peter Sam. Then you have the glow-in-the-dark green that they introduced for one episode.
Yeah, that's it. One episode.
It would be cool if they had some nods to it. Perhaps some railway signs occasionally that we could see that have the glow-in-the-dark paint.
Yeah.
At night, but I really don't think we're ever going to see that.
On the plus side, though, I loved hearing Rob Rackstraw screaming as James. That's always a plus. Never gonna get tired of that man screaming.
But I think the episode was alright, but at the same time, I can see where you're coming from on that.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to number 3. Get triggered again, people. It's Skiff and the Mermaid.
Now, I actually really love Skiff and the Mermaid, so I'm a little upset about your choice, and as a keyboard warrior, I am going to ask you to take it back right now.
Your opinion is invalid.
Alright.
I'm kidding, no. It just didn't feel like it would carry a story with me. Sure, there was a lot of great humor, there was great music for Skiff's little ditty. Captain Joe realizing, oh crud, Skiff is in there, and then just throwing the lifeboats away like one of those little collapsible figures that you push underneath their stand and they fall down as he runs to go after them. That was funny. His own grandkids doubting that their grandfather can do anything was good. And then Sir Topham Hatt losing his mind and revealing that he was actually in the Boy Scouts. It was good, but it just didn't feel like it had enough for me as a story to drive things. Sure, it was fun, it was humorous, and we all now know that that little rock Sir Topham had put a face on has a page on the wiki, but it just didn't seem to really bring out a lot for Skiff that would really help develop his character. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't like Blown Away that much, but there we got to see more about Skiff's character and how he grew. Here it was just like a wild goose chase. A funny wild goose chase, but not a good one.
Does The Rock actually have its own wiki page?
It probably does now.
Oh no.
Bumpy trucks or bumpy cars if you live in America.
Such a weird title. I never really understood the title, and the way they played it off too, it seemed like Whiff was going to be a main character. And I was really excited because Whiff hasn't had a story about himself since season 16. And we haven't really seen him since Scruff's makeover, I feel like, in season 17.
This is Mattel. It's corporate Thomas. Thomas must always be in the episode. He must always be the right one. It is Thomas. He is the only right one. No, it was just poorly written. One thing that really okay, there are several things that really irk me about this episode, but the one thing that absolutely pisses me off is Rocky re-railing Belle. We saw in the episode when she and Flynn arrived to fight that fire, she went completely off the tracks. All of her wheels were off the tracks. Then later in the episode, Rocky is literally just like a fishing line, like a fishing rod. He picks her up, she's level, he drops her, and she's on the rails. That's not how you re-rail engines in this world. I mean, come on, even in other episodes with Rocky picking up a derailed engine, he had that engine lifting mechanism. And he would actually physically lift them up and gently send them on the rails, not play fishing with them using their coupling hook. That's one thing that legitimately pissed me off in this episode, is the lack of realism for re-railing engine. The other thing is how they decided to paint the rails. You never paint the top of the rails. It doesn't matter how hot it is. It's just going to peel right off and cause trouble. They actually did paint the rails back in the day of Steam, but it was on the sides, never the top. So that was another thing that pissed me off. And then just the story was not thought out well. If it was thought out with Whiff being the primary lead, I'm sure it would have been a lot more entertaining and a lot more fun, even with the same stuff.
Now, honestly, I don't remember Belle being like how she was being re-railed. So that's on my personal fault for that. So I can't really comment on that. And the tracks being painted on the tops, I did feel like that was a little unrealistic. I would have preferred it on the sides, but at the same time, I feel like I could give it a little bit of a pass. However, I do feel like Thomas was just a little too much when his role could have been replaced with Whiff, as he's the one who starts everything that goes on with this story, or at least Flynn and Belle's part, because you have two different segments in this. You have Belle and Flynn's part of the episode, and then you have Sir Topham Hatt's episode or part. And I felt like it was an interesting idea, but I do believe, one, the name is just horrible, but two, I feel like it could have been played out just a little bit better.
The one thing I did like about this episode is when Fat Hat is getting ready to leave his office at Knapford, and that picture of his mother suddenly comes alive with her scolding him about leaving without wearing the hat she got him. That is absolutely relatable to everyone, no matter how old you are, because you listen to what your parents tell you, especially your mother. Never invoke Mama Bear's wrath. She will not let you live, metaphorically. So that was funny. I legitimately chuckled at that. It was tactful and it was tasteful humor. That's something everyone can relate to, at any age.
Now, I don't know if I should get you started on this one, but what is your number one pick for your least favorite episode? Because I feel like I know what it is, and I feel like it's not going to end well.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet, so for those of you who love Phillip, shut off the audio right now. I hate Phillip, and I absolutely hated Tobys New Friend. As Henry said earlier, it's literally a rewrite with the new ADHD OCD diesel engine character to replace the trucks from season 15, Toby and Belle. Tobys New Friend was literally nothing other than Toby and Belle, but with an annoying, obnoxious little turd of an engine. I absolutely hated it. It had no grounds for being a story. Tobys New Friend could have been someone else. Like, why don't we have Porter trying to be Tobys New Friend? Because you know what? It would work out. Porter is not exactly from the UK. It's clear he's from Brooklyn. He's used to noise. He's used to working hard. He's used to throwing around his weight. Having someone like that interacting with Toby, who likes to do his work quietly, who's experienced in all of this, would have had a much better chemistry. And it would have been interesting to see Toby working somewhere else like the docks. Anyway, that's it for my rant on this one because I absolutely hate it. I don't care what you guys say. I hate it. I hate Phillip. And that's the end of my thoughts.
Now, I do agree that Toby and Porter, like, I never even thought of that, but I feel like that would be a great chemistry together. I feel like you could have an episode where Toby and Porter, they meet for the first time because Toby has to take stones from the quarry down to the docks to be shipped out. He meets Porter for the first real time that they become good friends, and then they have to work together. And with Porter liking or used to all the loud noises, and Toby wanted to take it more casual but slow and quiet, but they still have the common connection that they want to get their job done correctly and professionally. And I feel like that would have been a great chemistry to have instead of just Phillip for the sake of having Phillip.
Exactly. So, now you know the 5 episodes that Henry and I just really do not care to watch again and again. And before we get to our top 5, I'm going to throw out my honorable mentions. And for you guys who are going to complain that there are 2 episodes that may tie in the list, get over it. My number 5 for honorable mentions for me are both Daisy-themed episodes, The Way She Does It and The Railcar and the Coaches. I mean, the Unlucky Tug said it best in his review. Daisy's been getting a lot of screen time. They're clearly enjoying riding with her. The Railcar and the Coaches was literally based off of her debut episode in Season 2, where she insulted Annie, Clarabelle, and Henrietta. Davy Moore brought that right back around for a wonderful episode. It was nice to see that it wasn't an engine causing as much trouble, it was coaches causing trouble. And I found that really, really fun. Now, The Way She Does It for me was just a riot. Yes, there was fan service with Oliver and Duck at Knapford Station, but the fact that Duck says, "I have no idea what she just said," after Daisy leaves, and Oliver agrees with him saying, "Me neither," and they're both clearly confused as the devil, was a brilliant touch because Daisy will babble about nonsense for no reason. It was just funny. It was funny to see the chemistry she has with a lot of different characters, and it's clear they keep carrying that on into season 21, which is nice.
Now, for Railcar and Coaches, I really did like how Annie and Clarabelle actually were pretty much the main characters, maybe even a little bit more than Daisy, as they were the baddies or the bad guys in the episode. And that was just really cool, and I felt like that built a lot of character, because most of the time we're used to seeing them as the voice of reason for Thomas. And I felt like it was really cool to see them just act a little bit different, but still within their characteristics realms. And then with The Way She Does It, I really did like Duck and Oliver's interactions. One, because it was humorous, but two, it honestly fit with their branch line, because Duck and Oliver work relatively close to Daisy and Ryan, and because of that, they intersect a lot. So I feel like it made a lot of sense for them to interact rather than, I don't know, Salty or Thomas, for example.
Yeah. So that's number 5. For number 4, I have to give it to Cautious Connor. It was a fun, unique episode. There were a lot of great things about it. Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to say Steven's pep talk was worth it, but what made it worth it for me was seeing that Connor got a lot of development. It's clear he loves to be a speed demon, but one little accident that could have derailed him and has actually caused accidents in the real world was enough to shake him. It was something to make him become overly cautious. And you have to admit, you guys, come on, that angle of when they fixed Connor at the Steamworks, those 2 workers, that was pretty darn cool. That was a great angle. It was unique. And yes, I won't forget Steven's great speed race with Connor. No one will. But that Eye of the Tiger parody or reference or cover or whatever you want to call it, it's getting old. That's my legitimate only complaint, is that's getting old. Visual gags in this obviously were hysterical. Steven's face while he's telling the pep story, I'm sure someone is going to meme it into like a murder face. I don't know. But it just kind of gives off that impression from the angle. And the fact that Captain Joe can row Skip along the railroad line faster than Connor. Really, that is funny.
Captain Joe has been hitting the gym. He's been making gains. He has protein bars and stuff, so I could see it.
Then why does he have spaghetti arms?
He doesn't want to show it off. He doesn't flex on people.
Yeah, but I mean, Cautious Connor was a fun episode. I watch it every so often again just because I like it, but it's not enough to get to my top 5, and neither is my number 3 spot, which suits the lead of the episode for Henry Gets the Express. It really felt like a Railway Series-esque story, and one of my favorite parts is if you're like an audio guy, you would have noticed that the US dub for Gordon peaked heavily when he said, "Uncouple me at once, I'm going back to my shed." You could hear that peak in the microphone that they couldn't fight, no matter how badly they edited it. It was a legitimate, good, fun, and wholesome episode. It was great. It was nice to see Gordon being forced to take consequences for his actions. I don't care how important you think you are. You're needed then and there, not when you're ready, not when it conveniences you. The fact Sir Topham Hatt made that a lesson was great. I mean, if you have siblings or anything, you know what that's like. If you're not going to do something, your parents will find someone else to do it and make you do the other person's end. So...
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to really talk about it much right now, but I did like it.
Number 2 is, again, another set of episodes. It's going to be what I call the coffee pot story. It's the 2 episodes with Glenn. I forget what they're called, but I know it's Over the Hill and the Christmas Coffee Pot.
Yeah.
The Christmas Coffee Pot was a good one and had a lot of good humor, especially with Marion. And can I seriously just say, what the hell is going on in her mind? A Christmas tree that talks? Really?
It is Marion, though.
Fair point. But, I mean, it was nice to see that Thomas kind of was in his character. Instead of, running away and hiding Glenn everywhere, he went to the Earl, and the Earl got Glenn restored. The other thing is, how many times is this fear of scrap going to keep going in? We already know from Hero of the Rails that Fat Hat is not going to scrap a steam engine. If that were the case, Henry would not have been here after season 1. But both of them were a lot of fun. I liked seeing Glenn being restored. Now for you purists, get over it. They're not going to show them taking Glenn apart and forging every new piece just to make him work. If they moved him around enough, clearly all they need to do is clean off the rust, repaint him, put a few new nuts and screws and bolts here and there, and he can steam again. Now, Over the Hill. Oh my god. That Eye of the Tiger bit, that beautiful Eye of the Tiger bit. I kid you not, I was sitting watching this with my cousin. We both paused it as soon as that old-timey version of, what was it, Jingle Bells? Started playing after that hardcore guitar riffing. We looked at each other and we immediately burst out laughing for about 20 minutes. It was just that good. And then the banter between Stephen and Glenn holding up James and Gordon on Gordon's Hill was priceless, especially Glenn saying, "Would you like a glass of milk with that, young Gordon?" That is hysterical, because if you know a pair of elderly friends, they will poke fun at you like that no matter how old you are. You can be older than them and they'll still do that to you. So it was nice to see the chemistry between the two, and it's nice to see that they carried it on into season 21.
Again, I'm not going to really speak on this right now. But, yeah.
Now, number 1 is something that I personally loved, and we know that you don't like. It was Pouty James. It was nice to see... Well, obviously, Andrew Brenner wrote this, so that's why James got the lead. But it was nice to see, how James is being treated in the series. It's nice to see that James is becoming more of his old, pompous, arrogant, stuck-up self. And you got to admit, some of the facial expressions James made before, all the engines were teasing him were funny. When Sir Topham Hatt says, "I'm taking your coaches away," that eye twitch. And then James screaming "waste cars" after he promises to behave was funny. It was just a good, wholesome, fun episode that If you're a James fan, you'll like it. I don't go back and watch it again and again and again, even though I'm a James fan, but it's just something that I found was kind of a good way to see how he interacts. One thing that may cause some people to be upset is if you go on the wiki, you'll see in trivia, if they kept it there, that it said Emily has a particular fondness for James and treats him like a little brother. That came out of a magazine. And you know what? They kind of showed that here with Emily trying to be a sisterly figure to James. She did try to help him understand things can't always go your way, just kind of like a sister would to their sibling. It was nice to see that kind of development for Emily instead of her being a bossy, arrogant, snooty girl. It was nice to see her being more human in a sense.
I like how they are writing Emily here recently in the series. It's gone away from the season 8 vibe and more to the season 7 vibe of her, and I really do appreciate that, of her just trying to be helpful and a good asset to the railway and trying to be really friendly. So I do really appreciate that.
So those are my personal honorable mentions for season 20 in regards to episodes. They're just ones that I'd recommend if you're not a fan of my top 5 favorite.
Now, for my honorable mentions, however, I only have 4, and I don't really combine any episodes together for this part.
Okay.
Now, for number 4, I had All in Vain. I felt All in Vain was a very good James episode, and I felt like out of the 2, that should have been the main one, and Pouty James should have been replaced. However, I did like the character development with Edward and James. I love that dynamic duo. I did like James getting freaked out about Scratch. Now, in hindsight, you would think, oh, who cares about Scratch? Well, James cares about Scratch because it's James and he's vain and egotistic. So I felt like that made a lot of sense, and I thought it was just a fun story to watch in general.
One thing that I personally like, and some of the younger members of this podcast might not understand, is the "here's James" thing. When Edward said "here's Edward," that's literally got to be a reference to The Shining with "here's Johnny." In all honesty, the way Edward delivered it, you could literally just dub it over with him saying "here's Johnny." But the humor in this episode was nice. It was funny to see James getting literally so overwhelmed by a tiny scratch, which I presume is on his running board, on his right side. When he pulled into Knapford, when he was pulling out of Knapford at the end of the episode, you only saw his left side. You did not even see his running board. The mayor would not have noticed it at all.
Now, also, he did an inspection because the mayor is high-class royalty.
Not to mention, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say, but I did like the humor with the Steamworks worker coming in and giving the thumbs up about James's paint work. So that I found was good, tasteful humor. It's again nice to see those red coaches, but I thought they had special coaches for like this sort of event, not red coaches.
They used to in the model series. I know those were
okay.
Spencer's coaches now, though. So that's probably why. Is because then the kids wouldn't be able to differentiate Spencer's coaches to normal Sodor coaches, probably.
Okay.
Which I'm fine with that. Red coaches I thought was an interesting take on coach variety, and I really did just appreciate the variety when they could just use branch line coaches or even normal express coaches.
I'll agree with that.
But as for my number 3 honorable mention, I chose Blown Away. I really did like Duck and Oliver's interaction in the episode with Skiff. And I just find Skiff to be a really fun character. Now, honestly, when Skiff first was announced, I wasn't looking too forward to his character. But after seeing him in Sodor's Legend of Lost Treasure, he really did grow on me. And I do like episodes with him in there because I feel like Skiff is a fun character that we can have just good episodes from. And this really showed that we can. I really did enjoy the episode, and I felt like the storm was pretty nice to see. Some of the visual effects, even though Duck wasn't properly rendered during the storm. But either way, I felt like it was a nice episode, and I liked how Haru was even used at the end.
One thing I'm going to say, and I was ranting about this earlier in my least favorite episodes, but people are complaining about like Thomas being in the intro for Blown Away. You know what? No, that was handled tastefully. It's nice to see that, one, Thomas didn't speak, which is horrible for me to say, but it's nice to see that he was scared. You could see the storm looming in the background, and it was clear he was scared. He didn't want to be out there. Now, my problem with this episode is, one, people are going to claim it's fan service for the Little Western, because you got Duck, you got Oliver, you got Toad, you even have Harvey. But it's that Duck seemed to be condescending when he was talking to Skiff in the very first interaction between him and Oliver. And Oliver was more of a, I'm not being rude, I'm being as gentle but as straightforward as I can with my concern towards Skiff. The other part of it was, dear God, the lighting. When Oliver and Duck are at Bluff's Cove, just that lighting. Christ, don't watch this episode at night or in the dark. You'll get shivers. It was really well done. It was a great story, too, and for those of you who are saying it wasn't a good episode because Harvey didn't speak, that's called fan service done right. Instead of Rocky pulling up his dinky little rowboat, or even the breakdown train, they brought Harvey, which was much more tasteful. And I liked that.
Now, as for my number 2 choice, I chose Mucking About, and that was a hard one to place because most of my honorable mentions I really want to put in my top 5, but Mucking About I really did like. I liked Edward being in the episode, and I did like Max Monty, Oliver, Alfie, and Jack. It was really cool to have a pack episode, and I think that if we had at least one pack episode a season, I'd be perfectly happy. And I loved how Oliver got damaged and Thomas was pulling him along. And I thought that was really cool to see one of the vehicles on the flatbed again. And I really did like how Max and Monty having their first speaking appearance since the model series. I felt like that they were handled very well.
I'm going to keep my thoughts reserved about this one for later.
All right. And then my number 1 pick, which is one that I didn't talk about earlier when it was mentioned on another honorable mention, but Henry Gets the Express.
Henry Gets the Express.
This was so hard to put in the honorable mentions, and not in the top 5, but I just felt like there were so many really good episodes for the season, I felt like I couldn't place it there. Henry Gets the Express seemed like a very classic episode, and one you can watch over and over again that had a modern-day Railway Series 5 to it. But at the end of the day, I just felt like there's a few episodes that were a little bit better. I did love Henry and Gordon's characterization, and I really loved the banter between Scarlo and Rheneas when Gordon goes to pick up the stones. I really felt like that made the episode pretty great, and plus, too, who doesn't like the narrow gauge engines? But I really do wish I could have placed that higher, but if I had to choose a top 6 episodes, that would have been number 6 for sure.
I forgot to mention this with Henry Gets the Express, but since you brought it up, the interaction between Scarlo and Rheneas, Scarlo is just kind of sitting there like the awkwardly standing guy, like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to stay here. And also, poor Rheneas. Poor Rheneas, really. Come on.
I read somewhere that apparently it's supposed to be Peter Sam and Sir Handel instead of those two.
Well, I mean, they got their speaking time in the episode saving time, so that works.
Now, should I do the top 5 first, or do you want to do your top 5 first?
I'll let you go first, just so I can see what you have to say, because we may or may not have some of the same episodes.
Alright. For number 5, I chose Bradford the Brake Van. And I absolutely love Bradford as a character. I would love to see an episode with him as Samson, because apparently Samson is his engine that he works for, sort of like Oliver and Douglas share Toad. And so I would love to see an episode like that with them do maybe some adventures on the mainland or something like that, but preferably on Sodor, to just come back and give the other engines grief, or the trucks grief.
Bradford and the brake van. Sorry for cutting you off, but I'm going to have to admit that was an interesting choice, because one thing that got people so excited was, one, there were so few red cars seen, I think, at all. And two, the fact that ventilated vans got their faces back. Just Bradford in general, did he work on the military railroad or something? Because he's got a drill instructor vibe about him.
I'm going to say he transported tanks before. That's my consensus on it. And then it was transferred to Bradford after they deemed him too old or something.
I think it was really a good idea. It was a fun episode. Of course, Thomas had to be the lead, of course. but it was nice for them to acknowledge that all trains should have a brake van, which is probably a very big diss and roast on Hit Entertainment, because for years, the only engine who really ever had a brake van on his train was Oliver. At all.
And it was just great to have. I felt like Bradford was a great character. I would love to see some merchandise of him, and I would pick any of it up in a heartbeat, whether it be, dare I say it, even if they made a wood model of him. I'd be tempted to get it, but then again, they probably wouldn't look like Bradford, so...
Mattel, Fisher-Price, Takara, take notes.
But either way, for number 4, I chose Glenn's Christmas episodes. I felt like it was just a great series of Christmas episodes, and I felt like, at the time being, because I didn't know what we had for season 21 at the time, but I felt like, for the time being, I felt like those were probably the best Christmas episodes of the CGI series, debatably. I felt like Marion did a great job of just being, well, stupid and Marion. And I just love seeing Glenn back, because after, 7 seconds of dialogue, I felt like it was much needed that he come back into the series. And I just loved seeing him. And then when he met Steven, I felt like their chemistry just worked perfectly. And I love seeing them in the Runaway Engine, but I hope that they get another episode soon, because I just feel like they play off so well together. And I think it's just a duo that we need more in the series.
I think you may have triggered people by calling Marion stupid.
Oh well. I do like Marion, but sometimes she can be a little overwhelming.
Alrighty, so what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Skiff and the Mermaid. I felt like Skiff and the Mermaid was probably the funniest episode we've had in the entire series. I felt like the humor was done right. I love the Fat Controller in season 20 for his humor. And I just felt like it was a great written episode. I liked that Duck had a good role in it. But the only thing I had a problem with was when the mermaid was actually shown at the end on the flatbed, or with the other boxes or whatever on the truck. Instead of Thomas pulling it, I wish Oliver or Ryan had pulled it. Someone that worked on that part of the line to make it more realistic. I feel like Thomas sort of broke the episode, and it felt, even though he didn't speak, and I didn't really mind him that much, but I felt like it just would have been a little bit better and a little bit more tasteful if we had a little Western engine, or perhaps Ryan pull it.
Okay, so you actually hit one of the biggest reasons why I hated that episode. It was just Thomas breaking it out. It would have been neat to see Donald or Douglas just by themselves, just to kind of show like, hey, they're not always working together. But again, this is corporate mandated Thomas. Thomas must be the hero of every stupid show. Just saying.
Don't even understand why. But now, for number 2, my number 2 pick is very interesting, and this is the main reason of combining.
Do tell.
Now, I felt like it was a disservice to separate the small railway engine stories, and Hank did too, because they seemed like a perfect package. So for number 2, I chose the small railway engines. And the main reason why it wasn't at number 1 was because of Thomas's involvement. I really felt like it took away from some episodes. Now, Tit for Tat is probably my favorite episode by itself. But since I'm combining Mike's Whistle and Useful Railway together, I do have to choose those. Now, in the Railway series, in the books, Useful Railway is my favorite story. And then Tit for Tat was probably my least favorite. But now it got reversed. The reason being is Tit for Tat I just felt more natural and felt like a proper Railway series story. And I really just didn't like how in Mike's Whistle, Thomas was really shoehorned into the episode, and you could feel it, when I felt like Duck could have provided a better interaction, because we haven't had an episode about Duck to himself since season 18. And even though this wouldn't have been Duck's episode, it would have been nice to have some actual good dialogue from Duck and his driver, like we had about the eggs. Perhaps it could have started off with Mike's Whistle and showing an up-close shot of Duck's whistle having eggs being cooked on it, and then something falling, and then his driver and fireman looking at his whistle like, oh no. and then it comes back into the present time, and it shows him pulling up to a station trying to whistle, and then the engines are making fun of him, and then we have the quote from the narrator saying what Ted Robinson had spoken the CD or on the old record. I think it was Ted Robinson, correct?
I don't know, in all honesty, but
I can't remember. I think it was Ted Robinson, but I could be wrong. But if you know the actual narrator for the old records, please comment down below. That'd be helpful.
Absolutely. I'm going to hold off my thoughts on what we'll call the Small Railway series trio, just because, again, as you said, we can't bear to put them away at one by one. They're all together. And I like what you have to say about it. It's very good. It's very straightforward, and I agree with you a lot. But
and before I forget, Useful Railway. Useful Railway was great. However, I felt like Thomas's thing just didn't really seem natural to the Railway series. Like as the Reverend W. Audrey said, shoehorning Thomas in every single situation just so they can make a profit isn't the best thing at the end of the day. And I really do feel like perhaps Duck or Oliver or Donald or Douglas could have done a lot better, because we know Donald and Douglas were going to pick up ballast from the railway. So I felt like that could have made for a better little story arc and perhaps just add a little bit more character between them. But at the end of the day, I try not to let that divide my opinion too much, otherwise it could have been perhaps lower on the list. But I absolutely love the stories for what they were, and I really do feel like they were great homage to Reverend W. Audrey, and I would love to see more episodes like this. Not even if we didn't have 3 episodes, but maybe 1 a season based on the Reverend W. Audrey's work, or even Christopher Audrey's work. I feel like that would be fantastic, and I feel like it'd just be a nice nod to its origins, as we've been getting recently, such as Letters to Santa with Percy and Harold, and even recently with Trevor Breaks the Ice,
Terrence
Breaks the Ice, with Thomas Terrence in the Snow. But
yeah.
That's the end of number 2. Now for number 1, you may be like, oh, he didn't choose the Small Railway Engines for number 1. How dare he? This is blasphemy against
Should I tell
the Thomas
post-production Hank American Engine to put a drum roll here?
Oh my gosh. But for number 1, I chose Ryan and Daisy.
Yes.
I felt like this character duo is just fantastic. I feel like it just adds so many different story possibilities, and this was really shown here. It showed how much of a nice character Ryan is, which is very interesting, because originally he was supposed to be a mean, egotistic character by his product descriptions. But I really do feel like this played off very well with Ryan, and it was great to have an episode about Daisy, and I do believe this is probably the best modern-day Daisy episode to date.
Ooh, get triggered.
But either way, I would love the personalities between the two. It was just great to see, and I would really love an episode like this again in the future. I feel like there's just so many positives to seeing just Winston in the background, Sir Topham Hatt's spit take, and especially him dropping his ice cream. I felt like those were quite humorous parts, but at the same time, I really did like Ryan's motivation to work, and I did like him pushing the mail coach, pulling passenger cars as well. It just really functioned how an actual branch line would be back in those days with very few engines, even though it wasn't completely necessary at the same time. But either way, I would really love an episode to be written like this in the future, and I feel like a lot can be learned from this episode for the writers.
So, again, I'm going to hold my thoughts on this one, but you really did raise up some good points. It was really nice to see Ryan being the little goody-goody character that he is now than what he was supposed to be.
Now, it's time for your top 5, because I'm finished here.
Alrighty, number 5 was one that you've actually glazed over. It is the Missing Breakdown Train. I loved this episode. It was literally fan service done right, with Oliver and Duck being put in the episode. It was nice to see Ryan taking the lead role with Judy and Jerome. It was nice to hear Judy and Jerome's theme, and Oliver's clueless expression when he first sees the two. 1 is kind of cute from what I've been hearing from people, and 2, it's kind of funny. It's like, what are you looking at me for? But it was just nice to see the dynamic between these side characters that everyone thought Mattel's was like, oh, they can have them for 2015 and then no more. And it was just a fun, wholesome episode. It was nice because we got to see Blue Mountain Quarry, and hey, Daisy actually had a wreck, thanks to a bull.
Mm-hmm.
Bullseye.
I felt like that was really cool to see. Like, you don't really see too many wrecks in modern-day Thomas, and just have Daisy, who does carry passengers. I mean, this was probably one of the few passenger wrecks we've gotten in quite some time, too.
But did she have anyone on board is the question.
I guess we'll never know.
The world may never know.
But I really do love Judy and Jerome as a whole, and I would like to see some merchandise of them besides just Jerome being made for Trackmaster. Perhaps we could even get a free pack eventually of Daisy and Judy. I feel like that would fit very well into the lineup with Trackmaster, especially to have a diesel rail car that they could pretty much use Etienne's mold for it for the most part.
Fair point. Number 4 for me, again, is a merging of 3. It's going to be the Small Railway series. First of all, with Mike's whistle, 1, I would honestly replace Thomas with Edward, because Edward and Duck have had a long-standing friendship. To see Edward struggling not to laugh about Duck's unfortunate mishap from his crew making breakfast would be hysterical. Just seeing this old wise engine collecting some ballast for his branch line, struggling so hard to not laugh, would be funny. And I mean, come on, Rex would have probably kept poking Edward with his stick saying, come on, you want to laugh, just laugh, you want to laugh. It would have been a much better interaction than shoehorning Thomas in there. Again, I digress, I've been saying it all the time, it's corporate mandated Thomas. But it was nice to hear the interaction from Duck to his driver, especially his driver sounding so exasperated with, all right, don't go on about it. That was funny. It was funny to see that an engine can literally hold a grudge against its crew. And by the way, Mike is the angriest little turd in the show. Can we just call him the Rage Quit engine, please?
I feel like him and Duncan, I feel like they have, like, weekly anger management get-togethers. With Sir Handel occasionally coming out, because apparently Sir Handel's an old man now, but I feel like when Sir Handel has those fits of rage, he goes there. I feel like that's how he got calmed down, not from working at the quarry.
Okay, that's a fair point, but still, Mike is just the angriest little engine I've ever seen. Tit for tat, you mentioned it earlier, and Unlucky Tug said it best. It was jarring. We started out with the small railway engines, then suddenly it's the others, and then it's suddenly back to the little railway. Okay, so what? We got to see the Reverend actually talking to his creation, but we didn't need to have Thomas. We didn't need to have James. We didn't need to have Toby. We didn't even need to have Annie and Clarabelle or Toby and Henrietta. That's just me. It would have been nice to see the Reverend and Teddy Boston on the Little Western line taking pictures of Donald and Douglas, Duck with the slip coaches, Oliver and Toad, stuff like that, because it stays relatively cohesive. Now, if we had Thomas, and this is a very big stretch, Thomas working on Duck's branch line, I was about to say Oliver's, I don't know why, but if we saw Thomas working on Duck's branch line, then yes, that warrants it, because what is it, Arlesborough is on Duck's branch line, Tidmouth to Arlesborough. That would have flowed much more smoothly. And I absolutely loved this episode. It was one of my personal favorites. I watch it a lot, and I like seeing that they went so far as to render Teddy Boston, the Reverend, and the purple Mini Cooper that they were driving from the Railway series.
I did enjoy just like every little nod that they did. Like, even though you don't like the standard gauge engines being put in there, I really do feel like that was a good world builder to show that the line isn't just, like, they're just not focusing around the small railway engines. And I did think Thomas's inclusion in this episode was very just nice in general. I felt like it was just very subtle and tastefully done. And I feel like with every character it was, with Scarloey, James, Toby, I felt like all of them fit in pretty well for that section. So.
Now, Useful Railway has been the spawn of so many memes, and I myself jumped onto that Rex Vivo bandwagon. One, that was hysterical for a crash. And two, come on, my older brother, who no longer watches Thomas, ended up watching this episode with me, and he laughed. And the guy's older than I am. He hasn't watched Thomas since he was a little kid. And he laughed, and his words right out of his mouth were, with friends like that, who needs enemies, between Rex, Mike, and Bert, just the way they interacted. Again, here comes the complaints about the corporate mandated Thomas in the episode. It would have been nice to see Oliver or Duck there. It would have been nice to see them just even saying hello to the Smallies. And Chris Renshaw, can you please share with me your musical notes for your renditions of Never Overlook a Little Engine, please? Useful Railway has my personal favorite music out of all three of these episodes. Now, YouTube user Oliver GWR11, if I got it right, let me know. If I didn't, Twitter me immediately. He did an instrumental of this episode. I keep listening and watching that instrumental because I love the music. It was just done so well, and I feel like it's a classic story. Each one of these three was a story in and of its own right, and it holds. It's a timeless one that I'll keep watching again and again.
Alright. Now, what's your number 3 pick? Because we know you're number 4 now.
Number 3 was actually Ryan and Daisy. This was an episode I constantly went back to watch. The Unlucky Tug said it best about Ryan. Ryan just fits in the universe. He feels like a Thomas character. He is a Thomas character, but he belongs. He wasn't just shoehorned in for toys. He belongs. Like he was meant to be in the series. And it's just nice to see him being a little goody-goody engine. The humor was nice, and really, they had to make Sir Topham Hatt drop the chocolate flavor. That was the best flavor. Why couldn't it have been the strawberry? But I digress. It was a lot of fun in this episode.
They wouldn't have said no so hard if it was the strawberry flavor.
Well, true. But this episode was just a lot of fun. It was wholesome, and it was kind of funny seeing Toby get upset at Ryan like a grumpy old man. For once, it suited Toby because Toby used to be a grumpy old man in Season 3. But, it's just an episode that I will go back and I'll watch again and again. It was just a lot of fun, and I enjoy it.
Now, something I didn't mention is I can really relate with Ryan with that. Because sometimes I try too hard to make people happy and do their, help them with their problems without necessarily taking care of things that I need to take care of myself. So I can really relate with this episode and feel like that it really was something that can happen on a daily, or not daily, but can happen in real life.
So that's number 3. Number 2, and I absolutely love this episode. I've been saying that a lot, but it's Mucking About. Max, that intro, just the intro alone, and I knew it was going to be a great episode. It was nice to see that Max and Monty are, as Henry has told me several times, the Dukes of Hazzard twins. For Thomas and friends, they're careless, they're reckless, they want to race. It suits them. Seeing how Oliver the Excavator is trying so hard to keep those two under wraps is funny. Seeing that they're like, uh-oh, they're bad boys who did something they weren't supposed to do when Oliver's piston gets damaged was funny. Seeing them having guilty faces before they sass off with, yes, sir, was funny. It was just a good, wholesome episode that relates everyone to Max and Monty, because everyone has dealt with fools like them in the past. It was nice to see that Edward, oh my god, here we go with the comments, Edward exists, was more in character, with him being more wise and mature in his advice. Usually it's best to not acknowledge a troublemaker, but they will make themselves acknowledged. And Mama Duck for the win. They could have easily just rolled over him, but no, Mama Duck was going to chase him down if they tried. That was a riot. And to see that old habits never change, that's something that's good to show kids. Is sure, you can get people into trouble, but they won't change their habits at all.
I also did like the inclusion of Judy and Jerome. I didn't mention this earlier, but I liked how they used them to rescue Thomas instead of perhaps Rocky, for example. Even though Rocky could have been used, I really did like the use of Judy and Jerome. It just made it seem, it just shows that they have riding cranes that can come to the rescue.
I'm just going to say, if I go to the trivia section on the wiki for this page and they say this is the first time that all 3 breakdown cranes have appeared in one episode, I'm going to lose my head. Now, number 1 is one that I have watched for God knows how many times because I adore this episode. For me, personally, it is the best episode out of all the Christmas episodes, and it's Love Me Tender. Even Diesel D199 said his comment was sacrilegious, but Chris Renshaw's theme for Donald and Douglas, which has carried over to season 21, thank you God, is beautiful. It's wonderful. It's on par, if not above, the original one for the twins. The fact that Davey Moore knew how to write for the twins, how to make them be genuine brothers, was a beautiful shot for this episode. One thing that I did not like, and of course it's going to come up again, is the corporate mandated Thomas bit. Him saying, look, Donald has the number 9 tender and the number 10, could have been rewritten to Thomas chasing down Donald, saying, Donald, wait, you have Douglas's tender, instead of him catching up when Donald's taking on water. It was nice to see Toby being a bit more in character, being more gentle, and being more willing to help when he offered to help Douglas. But you know what? Other than that, I think it was still a great episode. Just needed 1 or 2 more rewrites, and it would have been so much better. But I loved this episode. It was literally a Donald and Douglas-esque episode. It just belongs for the both of them. And to see the fact that they can argue has carried over into season 21. I just hope that they do not keep that up for like every single episode. I'd like to see them showing off Donald and Douglas's other sides of being a cheeky pair of twins. Maybe keeping Bill and Ben in line by removing their nameplates. I'm just saying.
That would be interesting. Now, I did enjoy Love Me Tender, but at the end of the day, it just, I don't know. I thought it was not my favorite Donald Douglas episode. I did really like that they were used as their snow plowing team. I love that because you don't really get to see that but so much. But I would love in future if we saw an episode that didn't involve them in the snow, like CGI has used so far, and where they're not arguing, like you said. I would like to see some of their cheeky side and playing a trick on another engine. Perhaps a diesel or a new engine or something that doesn't really know them too well. But I digress. I think it was a good episode. I just feel like it could have been a little bit better.
Davey, if you're listening, for the love of God, write an episode with the Smallies and the Scottish twins. Having those 3 little runts going insane because they don't know if it's 1 engine or 4 because of the twins would be hysterical.
Now, we did have another topic as well that we wanted to talk about.
I think we'll save that for the next one. I know we did want to talk about him, and personally speaking, I do love this character a lot. We did want to talk about Edward in this one, but I mean, we really ran through a lot of time with this podcast. So the next one, we're going to talk about Edward, and there's kind of been a big controversy in season 21 following Edward.
Yes, indeed. Season 21 has left a lot to think about, honestly, and it really needs to be discussed, I feel like, from just a lot of different points and stuff like that. It's just a very, controversial change to the series. However, we're not really going to mention that in this one. However, I did mean something a little bit different, though.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But it sort of slipped my mind, and I was hoping that you had remembered.
Nope, but, that's kind of what I have to say. We'll be talking about Edward in the second podcast. And as we've said, and a lot of fans have said, season 20 was on par to being almost like a model series-esque season. It was wonderfully written for most, if not all, of the episodes. There were a lot of fun ones that people will go back and rewatch. And you know what? I don't really mind if some people liked episodes that I didn't care for. Tell me why. You're obviously going to have a different opinion than me. And if you didn't like any of my honorable mentions or my top 5 favorites, tell me why. I mean, most people are going to say I chose the fan servicey episodes, but not all of them were. Love Me Tender was literally a fan service episode, but it was fan service done right. It wasn't just an episode to say, oh, look, here's some new newbies, returning characters that we'll call newbies. It was literally, here's what previous characters in the show are like, and here's how they interact with each other. They carried that on, and it's doing great for them.
And I do want to back that up. If you have any reasons that you don't agree with our list, please let us know down in the comments below. We would love to hear your feedback on this. But I did remember what was the other thing we were thinking about talking about. Really? The season 21 new or returning characters.
Oh boy.
Yep. So far in season 21, we've had 13 episodes over the UK broadcast and the 5 Christmas episodes, which actually includes a New Year's episode, which is pretty different. But we've had a good amount of returnees so far, and I feel like we should discuss on how they've been handled so far, and maybe even dive into topics of new characters, because I know Hank loves the new characters so far.
I'm going to cut somebody. So, characters that have returned for season 21 have been Terrence the Tractor, Bulgy the double-decker bus, who is now back in his standard red livery rather than being the green vegetable bus, and the infamous Tugs character who has been there for years, Big Mickey.
Now, let's go through the characters one by one by how we knew they were coming up in the show. We'll start off with Terrence, since he was leaked on the DVD cover for Christmas on Sodor.
Hello.
Now, I felt like Terrence's character was very well played, and I would love to see more of it. And I felt so much warmth in my heart, and sadness and grief, to know that Terrence's tree was taken from him too early from this earth.
Barring the fact that the Earl's tree decided to take a dip in an icy pond, one thing that has gotten people to be kind of dissenting against Terrence is the fact that he doesn't have his black hair anymore, if we can call it that, from the model series.
The widow's peak.
Yes, thank you. And you know what? I'll admit it, it's visually jarring, but as Sam the Train fan said, I think it was on Twitter, that when he is moving and everything is moving, it's not as bad, because you're not going to be focusing on that bald spot on his face. Other than that, Terrence came back really nicely. It was nice to see his chemistry with Thomas, and of course, everyone's going to be talking about that flashback. My problem with the Rescue flashback is he had to take apart the train, first Annie and Clarabelle, and then he came back for Thomas. He didn't just pluck all 3 out. But, you know what? I'll take the nod. And this is a little bit off topic for Terrence, but if you pay attention in the beginning of the episode, this is from Sudrian Model Railroader, or Railway, the gentleman on Twitter, I forget his Twitter handle, but he pointed out that there is a deer and a rabbit on the ice pond in the very foreground, in an honest-to-God reference to the Disney movie Bambi. The fact that they put something like that, something that a lot of kids who know who Terrence is as grown-ups will notice, it really hits to home, because it's kind of the relationship Thomas and Terrence have. It's one falls, the other picks him up. And we saw that literally with Thomas pulling Terrence out from almost getting an icy cold bath.
I would just love to see Terrence with more interaction in the series, perhaps with Duck, because if you remember The Runaway, him and Duck did have a few lines together that would be really cool, and perhaps Percy and Toby, as we know that they've talked before. Perhaps we can even get a remake of the annual story where Terrence is actually used to shunt trucks. I feel like that would be a really interesting story that I feel like the model series would like to adapt because it would just be really interesting and captivating to younger viewers to see, and as well as hit home with fans.
Seriously, what is it with you and Doc having to have an episode?
You know,
He's overrated.
Duck, he's a great character, and everybody just thinks that every time he's included, it's for fan service,
Quack,
and that
quack,
can be true
quack.
at sometimes. But sometimes, I feel like Duck makes the story.
Okay, barring that aside, Terrence's return to the series was handled, I would say, tastefully. It wasn't too bad, it wasn't too good, but it was done right. Now, Bulgy's return to the series, what the
That's a
hell?
shocker.
His voice is right. His face looks a little weird, but I'll just have to grow on that. And
His render could use some work.
And really, free the roads again. If you want someone who hates the rails, just bring back George the Steamroller. Problem solved. He hates everything on the rails.
Well, I like Bulgy because then we could see some episodes with him and Birdie together. That would be cool to see because he doesn't think Birdie's a real bus. But after seeing Birdie memes, I feel like Birdie is the superior bus.
And here comes fan service with Birdie Bulgy on Duck's branch line with the obligatory Duck reference somewhere. Or the cameo, or making him the main character.
But the only thing with Bulgy, I loved how it was kept secret and we didn't know about it until it actually came out. I felt like that was just amazing. And I hope that we can see more Bulgy because just 1 minute where he doesn't even do anything but besides tell Thomas, free the roads. I felt like, you know, we need something a little better. I feel like an actual episode dedicated to Bulgy would be better. But I really did like that he returned. Out of all the characters, I was genuinely surprised.
So his was a little rocky of a return thus far, just because we don't know what's going to happen with him. So I'll put him in the gray area for it being good or bad or needs work. Now, Big Mickey from, what was it, A New Crane on the Dock or something, where they introduced Carly?
Yeah, New Crane on the Dock, and we had Carly, who I just don't like her design. It looks too modern, and the colors and everything. She sticks out like a sore thumb, I feel like. But we're not talking about Carly.
Big Mickey. Where do I begin? One, no.
Thank you. No.
Just no. I know that his voice actor from Tugs did pass away, and I know they got Robert Rackstraw to voice him, but Rackstraw should have at least tried to emulate Timothy Bateson from Tugs doing Big Mickey's voice. I get that it's difficult to do, but at least trying to emulate it instead of making him sound like a deep, overweight guy for a crane doesn't suit him. And his face is really fat, in all honesty. Like, what's with his eyeballs? And you know what? It's nice to see that they acknowledge that Big Mickey is Big Mickey. Because I did tell this to Henry that if they gave him a different name, I was really going to rage. The fact that they acknowledged the Tugs universe by calling Big Mickey Big Mickey. One, it gave me peace of mind for them knowing, okay, they know there's a historic character here. And two, it was just neat to see him interacting. And three, what Cranky said was perfect. You haven't spoken in years. And Big Mickey's retort is absolutely perfect. You've never said anything to me. The fact that we can see that Big Mickey has come back and is now apparently a part of the cast is fantastic. I just want to know how they're going to play it out. It's interesting because if you've ever watched Tugs, you know Big Mickey doesn't really take orders from anybody. It'd be nice to have an episode with a very bossy or snobby engine trying to tell Big Mickey what to do, and instead of Big Mickey deciding, oh yeah, okay, I'll listen to you, he ignores them and he carries on with his usual work.
It'd be great if Cranky said, nobody tells Big Mickey what to do.
That would be fantastic, because it would be good to have growth for all three cranes, and then just having the lesson learned that demanding people do something for you won't work out. Now, I know they did try that in, what was it, Emily, when Emily was trying to get supplies to Farmer McCall. I forget the name of that episode.
Respect for Emily?
No, that was Respect for Gordon. It was the storm. It was an episode where Emily was going after a storm and she had to take supplies to McCall.
It's Emily something.
Emily in the Storm or something? I don't know. But they could use that literal plot for just Big Mickey. And having, you know, Carly tell Big Mickey, come on, just be nice. When she tries to do it, have Big Mickey interfere and say no. Have Big Mickey be the one to say you need to stand your ground. If they're not going to be respectful or polite to you, you don't help them. Because that's disrespectful and you don't deserve to be disrespected. I want to see something like that. I want to see Big Mickey being more of a character at Random Docks. I want to see him interacting with Porter and Salty and anyone who comes through. That'd be great.
I feel like I'm really worried because I feel like Big Mickey, at the end of the day, if he doesn't have a speaking role in another episode, I feel like it is just pure fan service. And I would love for Big Mickey to have an actual presence on the dock and not just be mentioned that one time and then just seen in the background moving crates and now with a face.
Well,
but I really do hope that we have the best for Big Mickey ahead of us.
Only time will tell, Henry. Only time will tell.
And hopefully we can actually get some merchandise of these characters, because I don't know what it is with Mattel, but used to we would introduce characters just for the sake of having merchandising, and now we don't even make half of our characters in merchandising.
Why else? They can't be bothered.
But I think that's safe for another day, because I feel like we've gone over a few things today already.
Yeah. I mean, season 20, as we both said, it's probably one of the best seasons in the animated series. Having characters return and, like I said, people flipped out with Big Mickey being acknowledged as Big Mickey. I just kind of want to see where things are going to go, you know? And this is just a note on Big Mickey with Edward and the brass band. Big Mickey was the one who knocked Edward over with the boiler from the ship. It would be nice to see Edward holding a grudge against him for it. That'd be funny. But
or scared of him or something like that.
I'd be more angry, if anything. It's like, you knocked me over, you saw me coming, and you still moved.
No one tells Big Mickey what to do.
True. So, I hope you guys really enjoyed this podcast. This was something new, I guess we decided to try, because we have a lot of thoughts on the series, and not a lot of people are really kind of in the middle for their opinions, and we're both kind of that guy. We'll see the good and bad out of something, but we won't just stick to one side and say we're here because we think so. It's weighing everything. And that's kind of what I want you guys to realize is you don't have to worry about your opinions. They're your opinions. They're not right. They're not wrong. I hate Phillip. This was the perfect example. I hate Phillip, and Henry seems to not dislike him as much as I do. He stands him as a character, whereas I don't, and we're still getting along fine. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's nice to hear what you guys have to say, because we'll both see it in our own way. And to see it from another person's viewpoint about what your favorite episodes are, or your least favorite ones are, or even your thoughts on the new characters who have come back, it'd be fantastic.
And I hope that, even though this is the first episode, so hopefully if it seemed a little rough to you, I think it came out right, but if it seemed a little rough to you, I apologize, but this is our first episode, and I really can't wait for us to get some more podcasts done. And as we said, next week's, or I don't even know if it's next week's, but next time's podcast, we're going to try to get these on a regular basis once we actually figure out what our regular basis for this is going to be. But our next time basis, our main talking point is going to be about Edward, because Edward is such a pivotal character in this show, and recently he has had a nerf, as some would say in video game logic, but either way, I'm really interested to talk about this. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hank, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I hope you guys really had fun with this podcast. I know I did, and I did learn a couple things about my good friend Henry here. But
and I learned hearing more about the hatred of Phillip.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope this kind of, guys, helps you understand that I can't crank out content all the time like I used to do. And that hopefully this will suffice until I can get you guys nice reviews or remakes or stories. But, look forward to these podcasts. We want to hear what you guys have to say, and we hope you like what we have to say about certain things. I know I enjoyed hearing what Henry had to say about episodes and about season 20 and the new characters that have returned into the series, and I guess one that has always existed and then finally got a face, like Butch. And that you guys have fun with this. We're not here to cause a divide. We're here to just get you guys together.
And we're showing that, like, even though we have different opinions on the Thomas, like, universe as a whole, I mean, of course, we're still friends at the end of the day. And I really think that's the main thing that we need to take about, is that the Thomas fandom, even though we may all have different opinions, at the end of the day, we're all making new friends, and we're all just enjoying our favorite show. And our favorite blue tank engine, even though we may not always like him all the time. But either way, guys, I hope that we can do some really cool things with this podcast, and I hope that we can have a lot of fun on the way like today. And guys, I just can't wait to see you all in the next episode, episode 2, Edward.
This is Hank American Engine, you guys. This has been Hank American Engine with Henry NWR3, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast.
Goodbye.